Good evening to you, and welcome to Awakening Wednesdays, facilitated by our own beloved Gino Walker. And tonight's guest is Reverend Barbara from Canada. So I'm glad that you're joining us tonight. Thank you. After the violent overtake of our nation's capital today, I asked Gino, if I could say a few words to you, and she warmly agreed, warmly invited me to. Probably like most of you, I'm feeling deep sadness, deep rage, confusion, embarrassment, just to name a few of the emotions. Our nation, we as a nation, have experienced today deep trauma. But my sadness and my anger and my confusion and my embarrassment isn't just about today's event, but it's about all of the things that led up and caused today's event, probably like many of you. And it's important that we acknowledge how we're feeling as today has occurred and as the days preceding or following today's event. To bring the light of awareness to what we're feeling. We don't want to do a spiritual bypass. We don't want to stuff or hide those feelings because that just blocks the energy flow through us. So I invite you to feel what you need to feel, to express it, to journal it, to talk to someone about it, to beat on a pillow, to do what's necessary so that you can feel what needs to be felt and then allow it to move through you. That's what we want to do with our feelings. We want to feel them, we want to bring awareness to them, and then we want to release them so that we could be a spaciousness for what else wants to happen. So tonight, as I prepared to come here, I was watching the news, and Rick Santorum, a former Republican senator, said, and I'm paraphrasing him now, he said, people on both sides, we just need to take a breath. We need to get over the rhetoric and the blame and the heat that both sides are feeling now. We need all to calm down and to take a step back. Because if we continue with the anger, or we continue with the deep sadness, or we continue with the confusion, no matter what side of the aisle we're on, we're going to perpetuate a separate, disunified nation. The only way we are going to create a unified nation is to release the negative feelings that we've been holding on to. Feel them and release them. I was so inspired tonight when I heard members of Congress on both sides of the aisle not only condemn what happened today, but also to say a new day is coming. A new beginning is happening. But it can't happen within us or within our nation if we hold to blame and to judgment and to our rage. I'm hoping that today's event is the bottom, that we as a nation have hit rock bottom. I'm hoping that today unifies our parties in such a way that we welcome a new beginning, a new start, a new day, one of unity. Yes, we will have our disagreements. Yes, we will have heated exchange. But at the end of the day, We're the United States of America. So I challenge you as the days come to let go of the judgment and the blame and the accusation and who's right and who's wrong, and allow yourself to be filled with new possibility, new beginning, a new day. I would like to lead us tonight in a prayer that Ernest Holmes, our founder, wrote some 80 years ago for our nation. I'm going to tweak it a bit to update it. But I ask you right now to please close your eyes and place your hands over your heart. To take a deep breath in. And allow yourself to feel peace. Allow yourself to feel an opening within. A Prayer for Our Country by Ernest Holmes. Believing in the divine destiny of the United States of America and the preservation of liberty, security, and self-expression, I offer this prayer for our country. We know that divine intelligence governs the destiny of the United States of America, directing the thought and activity of all who guides its affairs. We know that unity, happiness, and success are the gifts of freedom and are the divine heritage of everyone in this country. We know that unity, success, and happiness are now operating on the affairs of each individual in this country and in our country as a whole. We know that divine guidance enlightens the collective mind of the people of our country, causing it to know security and unity without loss of personal freedom or individual expression. We know that no one can believe or be led to believe that freedom must be surrendered on the count of our security. The all-knowing mind of God contains the answer to every problem that faces this country. We know that every leader in this country is now directed by this all-knowing mind and has the knowledge of complete solution to everything that divides us. We know for our country the experience of unity and wholeness and respect for every individual. And we know that this democracy shall endure, guaranteeing to everyone in this country freedom, happiness, and respect. And join with me in knowing this as we say together, and so it is.
Imagine there's no heaven. Isn't hard if you try. No hell below us. Above only sky. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Someday I hope you'll join us, and the world can live as one. Imagine no possessions. It's easy if you try. Nothing to kill or die for. Only a brotherhood of life. Imagine all the people sharing in all the world. Oh, you may think that I am a dreamer. I know I'm not the only one. I hope today is the day that you join us, and the world, all the world will live as one. Greetings. Thank you, Reverend Kevin, for lifting us up in prayer and reminding us that we are a spiritual community grounded in consciousness. And this is the time for us to come alive and be vigilant with our own thinking, with our hearts, and with our awareness that God is on the playing field right now. So I know, as I am battling between my own painful, heartbroken frustration, anger, and sadness, but I also know that this world that we know is possible, that we have all touched at some moment or time, no matter how brief. We must stay in the awareness that God is. Not to overlook, but to be diligent in our practice. So I welcome you to Kitchen Conversations tonight. I welcome you to recognizing that none of us are free as long as one of us is held captive. And that captivity is more than just in racism, sexism, men, women, children. As long as anybody is held captive in their mind that they have something to fear and to fight, then none of us are free. Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, 'cause if you do, you will hear there's a voice that's calling across the years, and they're crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land. To understand that none of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us in chains, none of us are free. Oh, there are people in the darkness, and they just can't see the light. If they don't say it's wrong, that's right. We've got to come together for our brothers, show our sisters that we care. Let's send the message out loud and clear that none of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us in chains, none of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free if one of us in chains. Whatever your chain may be, don't you know that none of us can be free till the chains are gone? None of us are free. Hey, Linda, thank you. Let's take a breath here in this moment. Let's take a breath and breathe into this moment. Tonight I have a dear friend of mine, dear friend from Canada. She's a Canadian. Reverend Barbara is going to be with us tonight as we talk about spiritual community. And wow, who would have thought that this would have been right in tune with everything that's going on. Spiritual community is all what it's about. And so we have a video that I'd like to play for you, and then we'll bring in Reverend Barbara.
We accept everybody. And for a lot of people, this is church. So we just putting our word out there with wellness.
Around the time we started is around when the ACLU launched a class action lawsuit against the Sheriff's Department for abuses inside the jail. And our founder, Patrice, her brother had been inside and was brutally beaten. While there was this really big legal strategy happening, there was nobody engaging people who had actually been inside and making sure they were at the forefront. Patrice had actually started the conversation with a theater piece Stained, which she toured around LA County, and out of that, more and more people were like, okay, well, what can we do? And that's when she came to me and a couple other organizers and was like, do you want to take on the Sheriff's Department? And I was like, let's go.
DPN allows for our imaginations to flourish, and it allows for us to be creative and experiment about what's possible. The 3 pillars of dignity and power now are abolition, transformative justice, and healing justice. And the importance of those 3 pillars is the healing work that we feel is necessary for the social justice movement. There's a lot of work that we do, and there's a lot of trauma that comes with us. So we have to make sure that we're okay in order to make sure that our community is okay. So it's about an idea that we can transform the communities that we've entered and that we've been in. And so transformative justice is extremely important for us.
Incarceration and state violence produce trauma. If we believe that folks who are most impacted should be leading this work, then we have to be able to deal with the impact of trauma on the most impacted people. And so for us, wellness is a centerpiece of resistance.
This is called our wellness clinic. We welcome the communities, basically formerly incarcerated people, their families, as well as communities that are mainly affected by police violence and brutality.
I think wellness for me is uplifting our resilience as poor folks, as Black and brown communities, uplifting our humanity, making connections, with each other. At DPN, we try to do collective decision making as much as possible and really leading with our members and their voices and their hearts.
I did 6 years in Valley State Prison, so I had no idea the amount of trauma that I endured. I couldn't do this work, I couldn't move further without the healing aspect and the wellness. I feel like this is what we need in order to make this movement come alive. So our job is to lift people up, teach people leadership skills, teach people wellness skills, teach people different practices that they can do throughout their days and their weeks to make them okay and effective at their work.
For me, when I think of spirit, I think of people feeling activated by a sense of purpose. I think when you get around a room of folks who've been directly impacted, purpose just starts bubbling up. For us, I think we really take that to heart.
And so I bring my spiritual practice wherever I go. It's been a journey because it's not something that every nonprofit has encouraged, definitely. It's not something that every movement I've been a part of has kind of uplifted. As an ally to the movement for Black Lives, I'm able to bring all that. So I feel very connected to my spirituality, my spiritual practice here.
Like most people was like, oh, you coming with a lot of baggage, like put you to the side or we can't help you with that. DPN was open arms, we want you.
DPN is about developing new ideas and practices and how we live today.
Hello, Rev. How are you? You look beautiful. Can you hear me?
Glad to be here with you.
My beautiful guest, my sister, Reverend Barbara Schreider-Trudell, in Canada. Just a powerhouse. We met some years ago.
Yes, so
And who would have known that us picking the topic of spiritual community would play into such a powerful alignment of where we are. And so I know you're in Canada, but we just have to touch it. Looking at the States, I'm sure you're aware of everything that has gone on today.
yes.
I'm really still very speechless and still grappling with everything that's happened. So, as a Canadian, what, and definitely before that, as a beautiful presence of spirit, what would you pray or say for us this day?
What I would say is remember our oneness. The idea of separation is a false idea. And because we're one, whatever's happening there is happening here. My husband has been on the TV all day, so I've been locked in my office. So, because I can hear it, but it's like I don't want to go into the darkness. What I want to do is shine the light in, so that we lift up. There's enough people who are angry that I want to take my anger and honor it, my sadness, my horror of what's going on, and honor that, and then remember that love is the answer regardless of the situation. That I cannot change somebody's mind or bring them into community with me if I punch them, hit them, or force them in some way. Like your song said, if one person is not free, then none of us are, because there's only one thing going on, and we're all some part of that one thing. So my heart goes out to the U.S. today. I've been in prayer, and what I know is that divine love is moving through everything, and that there is a healing occurring. And sometimes things get messy when they're ready to be cleansed. And I think that's what's happening right now, is this is a purification. And I want to see it as that as we breathe through these next couple of weeks, that a healing is going to occur at a big level. And I think what we saw in Georgia really set the stage for a whole new experience moving forward, which allows us to change the game. But for those of us who are driven by spirit, who live in that place of the heart space, I think it's really important that we look at it, and everything we're seeing on the news, that's a prayer request. And the prayer request isn't, here's how it has to look. The prayer request is, thy will be done. There is a divine power within me that's infinite, creative, and intelligent, and knows the way. God is all powerful. God is all knowing. I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. But I do know that spirit within me has some, and I choose to listen and act.
Beautifully said. So beautifully said. One of the things as I think about as this day unfolded, and recognizing my alignment, that I realized that this is just not about the United States. This is a world. This is our world, as you said, that we are purging the false sense of separation. And I know that you're absolutely right, that as I looked, even with anger, with tears, that I recognize that everyone there is in pain.
Absolutely.
It is in pain. And so as you have made the call, as my Reverend Kevin has made the call, for us to rise. Joe Biden said to Trump, step up. So
Yes,
I say to all people of spiritual consciousness, step up your consciousness. Step up your awareness. Step up your practice. It is your time. It is your time. So, in talking about spiritual community, you have really jumped in, and I guess let me give a little background about us.
Sure.
I'm not one for, I don't remember the years, but
So what?
I was actually in Toronto at Casino-Rama doing a show, and prior to that, I reached out to you as it was Center for Spiritual Living Toronto, correct?
Yes.
To see if I could speak and sing there. And lo and behold, the Rev said yes. I was like, oh, okay. And the Sunday that I was there, I thought it was supposed to be her off day. And I look out, and there she is. And I'm like, oh, my God. She's checking up on me. She's checking up on me. I thought, of course, Gino, she just can't turn her congregation over to anybody. But
but it was the beginning of an absolutely beautiful relationship that we have continued over the years. And her consciousness, Barbara's consciousness and dedication to spirit is beyond. And one of the things I have to say that always impressed me, you know, I've seen a lot of ministers do eulogies and take care of families. Your gift in creating a space of people releasing the loved ones, accepting a God presence is bar none one of the most beautiful things, that one of the most beautiful gifts, along with your consciousness, that you give to us, to people. And I've seen you do it time and time again. Just beautiful. If you didn't know that, I wanted to say
I just
it.
let God out. Thank you. And I wasn't checking up on you, if you remember. We went out for lunch afterwards. I was so impressed in the email and our conversation. I just wanted to experience you.
Yeah.
So you were my gift that day. And still.
We are gifts to one another. And so one of the beautiful things in having spiritual community, Reverend Barbara in Canada is the minister of 2 churches, and the churches are black churches, African American churches, people of color churches. And,
Yes.
you know, I wanted to just find out, what is that like for you to be in that space?
It's my family. I don't know. This is the thing that dumbfounds me. You know, when I look at people who go, I don't like you because of your skin color, I think, I don't get it. I simply don't get it. And what's interesting is I love my churches. And there's actually a 3rd church that, because they're closed down, I'm not speaking there right now, but I was also a black church. So there's some kind of sisterhood or family going on that, you know, I don't know, maybe I was a Black Baptist preacher in the old days or something in a previous life. I have no idea. All I know is that this is my family. And I love being there. I feel perfectly at home. In fact, I'm more comfortable in these 3 churches than I ever was in the one that I founded.
Wow.
Very strange.
And what do you contribute that to?
I wish I could answer it. I think it's really about answering the call. When I was called to ministry, and it really was a deep spiritual epiphany that called me to ministry, and I have surrendered into that over and over and over again. When I moved to Toronto, I had nothing. Like, I came here with $40 and a dream, and I landed, and I'm looking for a place to live, and I end up living in a house where I've got the basement, there's a young girl from Jamaica who's got the main floor, and then the couple who own the house are on the top 2 floors. And they were from the Caribbean as well, and I can't remember the name of the island. But what's interesting is when I went and met with them to take a look at the apartment, they were, you know, we prayed and you came.
Wow.
So it had even started then. And Brian was the one who walked me down the aisle when I married Pierre. And it's like this family has been gathering around me. And there's something about life that's calling me to step in I don't know, maybe a bigger, louder way. I took a course in September called Daring to Do, and it was really about, it's not just okay to not be a racist. You actually have to be anti-racist. But I actually take that a little bit further and go, I have to be pro-oneness, which means if at any point I'm separating, then I'm out of integrity. I'm not being my God self. And so to create community just requires to love each other. It's not hard. It's way easier than the alternative. So I don't know what to say. It's just home.
You know, I think one of the things when people think about community and oneness, I think a lot of times people think sameness. And in my world, oneness does not mean sameness. We are here as these individual expressions of the divine. And it is our gift, I think it is our duty to live our truth, to live our highest and best, whatever that is. And that does not have to interfere or hurt or harm someone else because they think differently. And we're finding, and I'll ask, in Canada, what is the racist or racism situation there in Canada? What?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's a lot different than what it is in the US. The difference is we play nice. You know, Canadians are known for being polite. I say nice is a 4-letter word because it's hiding a deeper truth, right? Like the racism's here. I've got friends who have said that they walk into a department store and they get followed all around the store. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, that's never happened to me. So, you know, I look at the way people are treated differently, and it's really beyond my comprehension. But what it's caused me to do is go, what is mine to do? And with my privilege, it's up to me to call it forth whenever I see it.
Yes.
Like when I see somebody using language or treating somebody badly or whatever, it's important that I step up and make sure that somebody is getting the story and that it's changing. Because if I love you enough, I'm not going to let somebody harm you.
Exactly. I have to say
Yeah.
that I'm very proud of our spiritual community and other spiritual communities that we have finally been able to balance or understand that speaking up doesn't deny the presence of spirit, doesn't deny.
No.
And in actuality, it's even more so. So in your communities, are there things that you're doing in your community to uplift consciousness, to awaken people to different possibilities of how you can deal with your feelings? Because as you said, it's not about changing somebody's thought. You know, we can't change anyone's thought, but we can provide avenues for people to be able to have a platform.
Well, that's the key, I think, is that to have conversations, because I know as a white minister in a black church, there have been a couple times when I've said something and it's come out of my mouth and I've thought, I should not have said that here. And sure enough, somebody will come up to me afterwards and say, you know, like, what were you thinking? Well, I am a white woman who was raised in a redneck white city. And I never met a black person till I was in my 20s.
What?
I know.
What?
How does that happen? Right? I don't know how that happens. You got to live in Calgary for that. Back a number of years, of course. But for whatever reason, it never occurred to me that the color of somebody's skin should make them different than me or less than me. There's always been a part of me that believed that God is right here where I am, being all people. But then I caught myself being racist. And I talk about that because I wasn't racist to black people, right? Because I didn't have anything around me to teach me that, because I think it's taught.
Yes.
What I was taught was racism to the indigenous people.
Ah.
And a few years back, we're driving through northern Ontario. We go through a reservation and we have to stop for gas and bathroom break and stuff. And when I walk in and see this indigenous man standing behind the counter, my first thoughts are, the place is probably dirty and he's likely drunk. I was mortified. Like in my own mind, I'm going, how can you be a minister and think such a horrible thing? And I went into the bathroom. The whole place was spotlessly clean, which is very strange for a gas station to start with. And I just sat in there for a couple of minutes and I went, where did you learn this? And I learned it from my dad, who would drive by this hotel where there was lots of drunks and stuff and go, oh, look at the drunk Indians. And that got implanted somehow. So when I came out of the bathroom, having forgiven myself and decided that this is not who I want to be, I went and talked to the gentleman for a few minutes, and he was beautiful. Like, it was such a gift to spend some time with him and just have a conversation. How's life? How are you doing? You know, how's business? Whatever, just conversation.
Yes.
And it was a deeply healing moment for me, because recognizing my own racism helps me to understand other people who feel that way, and then to forgive the ignorance, because if I can't love them, they can't heal.
It's, you know, it is a real awareness when we can be aware of our own racism. And as someone schooled me, I was like, well, everybody has racism. And they're like, you know, black people can't be racist. You can be prejudiced. But we don't control anything. We don't control the housing. We don't control the health, you know. And so the prejudice that's there, that that comes up. And, you know, I have said that the healing is not just having racism against. It's also the feeling as a black woman of who I am.
Yes.
And how I recognize who I am. And, you know, I still find that there are times when I go into places that, especially once we here in Southern California with the no bag, when you go purchase things, you don't have to put it in a bag. I still find that I'll have the receipt up high in my hand for people to see.
Right.
Yeah, I paid for it. I go to the person, go, okay, look, this is what I got. And I hear that little voice saying, you're doing this because I don't want to have that encounter. And so I started recognizing that, you know, the healing also is not just about outward healing. It's about inward healing. And
inward healing.
We all have these things, be it against black, white, indigenous people, Asian, lesbians, homosexual. I mean, the list is long. And most of us have things, not just about one, we got 2 or 3 things in there.
A list.
Yeah.
I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. Yeah.
That's rumbling within us. And, you know, as people talk about Black Lives Matter, I've said that this is, you know, of course, racism has been here, but it's not just racism. We've had sexism, homosexual, gay. I mean, it keeps boiling, the hatred and the judgment of something that's different. Anything that's...
There's such inequality.
Yes. To name a people, a place, sexual orientation, anything, that we name it bad or good because we're not participating or that we don't understand. So,
and instead of trying to understand, we just avoid the topic.
Yeah. So what do you feel as a minister? What is your role in helping to create spiritual community?
My role is to love, period. And so when I say something, you know, in person or on the pulpit or whatever that somebody takes hurtfully, I listen to them. And I remember speaking one Sunday and saying that I was the black sheep of my family. And that didn't go over so well. Like, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I went, whoa, wrong audience. But you can't pull it back, right? No. It's out. And so sure enough, somebody came up to me afterwards and said, you know, do you really think that was appropriate for this audience? I said, absolutely not. And she just stopped dead in her tracks and looked at me like that wasn't quite what she expected to hear.
Right.
And And I said, I listened to, she was talking about what her life had been like and everything. And I just loved her. And I was so grateful that she was so upfront and honest with me. And I said to her, I said, I really do apologize for that. I know as soon as it came out of my mouth, it shouldn't have. And I said, but I lived on a farm for many years and we had sheep. And we couldn't shear the black ones because we didn't have enough of that wool to sell it. So, it's like I was the outcast in my family, and it was based around that. And so there was the both of us because we came to understand each other at a different level. But it started with me not defending myself. And that to me is one of the most important pieces. That if somebody comes to me and says, "You've offended me," I sit back and say, "Tell me more." Like, it's not that I'm a bad, awful, terrible person trying to hurt people, but if I've offended somebody unknowingly and they come and tell me, I want to hear what they have to say. I was called out a few months ago. I was talking about little white lies. And so one of the women called me up and she says, "And what does that leave? The big black lies?" And I went, "Oh my God, I had no idea. I will never use that phrase again." But it's like until somebody tells you, you can't know.
Yes.
Right? Like I come from a different culture.
Yes.
So I'm learning every day, but I'm happy to learn. Like I'm excited to learn because I love what I do and I love the people I do it with. And so if I can learn something new, then I can share that with the other ministers that I know, or, like there's just so many white ministers.
Well, it's interesting because I think one of the most powerful things that you said is if somebody is offended, to listen. And here is how that's so powerful. Because listening to what you said, black sheep of the family, I didn't associate it that way. Little white lies, I didn't associate it with that way. But I have found myself at times too that I had to learn. It doesn't matter if I associate it with it that way. Exactly. It matters that this has affected someone else, and to be able to listen is so beautiful and so powerful without judging them and making them wrong or trying to convince them, well, that's not what I meant. What I meant was this, and what I da-da-da-da-da-da. And that, because she was ready for that. Like you said, she just stopped because then she was like, well, I don't have anything to fight against. Because you were ready to listen. And
she just gave me a big hug and she said, "I love you so much."
Yes.
It's like listening in a loving way is a healing thing to do. Stop trying to be right and choose to be happy instead. Right? It's an easy thing.
Not when you know you right. That is so powerful. Just if we can understand that we don't all see things the same way, and nor should we. It is our differences that creates this beautiful global expression called life. But you gave this woman and the other person respect to listen to what was hurting them.
Exactly.
We can't all have the same experiences, which is one of the things that Kitchen Conversations was inspired by. That I saw a platform that showed black people in one particular way.
Yes.
And it was truly, if I'm honest, it was a reflection of their white counterparts.
Yeah.
But if there's a black person with some jeans hanging and a big diamond earring here and a gold tooth, can you still appreciate that person?
Absolutely.
And that's where, for me, I wanted people to see that all people of color don't have the same experience.
Nope.
And we're not all the same, and our prejudice that runs our racism and this systematic presence that's all over the world that says certain people are not enough or don't have the right to be or do. So I applaud you as a minister being able to listen and just hear,
Yeah.
hear.
The most important thing I learned in ministry was listening, because people have all different experiences, and we come from different backgrounds, and we have different aches and hurts. And so if we can listen and hear that, because I've had people come to me, white people coming to me screaming and yelling at me because I'm the worst minister in the world, and me just listening to them and going, well, tell me more about that. Okay, yeah, I think I heard you say this. And so we talk and we talk and we talk. And at the end of it, I've had them give me a big hug going, oh my God, this wasn't even about you. Well, I knew it wasn't about me because I wasn't disturbed. You were. And so if I can listen to you and hear what your pain is, then maybe we can work it out, right? Like you're hurting. And that's important. So all of these people who are in DC right now, they all have a pain,
Yes.
and they're not wrong and bad. Now, their
Yes.
actions are questionable, right?
Right.
But the pain that they're feeling is real.
Yes.
Who's going to listen to them?
Yes.
Simply listen to them. We don't have to agree.
Exactly.
We don't have to say it's right what you're doing, but they need to feel heard.
Yes.
And I think for most of us, that's what we're searching for, is if somebody would just listen for a minute, then maybe we would feel valuable and
Yes.
important, because we all are.
We all are. I think that's beautifully said. And I heard myself sitting in my house, looking at the TV, feeling anger. And I just have to own up that part of me was angry as I looked at the protesters that were handled with such gentle care that if that had been people of color, the billy clubs, the
They'd have
tear
beaten down.
gas, the lives that would have been lost today. And so I acknowledge that part of that's the human expression of me that is hurt, that says,
Absolutely.
this is all we're asking, is that the way that you handled this, you gave people a right, even though as crazy as it was, to express themselves without killing people, without beating them senseless. And even though they're talking about they're going to put some people in jail, I mean, it's like nobody went to jail tonight. Okay. And then I was like, okay, Gino, those are good people too that are hurting. They may be hurting for different reasons, but they're hurting. And so it is not yours to judge what the cops are doing right or doing wrong. This is a time for you to heal that within you. Because if you see it, then I'm expressing that as well. And I'm calling myself on that. I'm expressing that anger, that frustration and pain of not being heard and of being ignored.
Yeah. And if that was you in that crowd, you'd have been beat down, like you'd have been arrested, possibly killed. Of course you're going to feel extreme pain. There's a huge injustice there that needs to heal, and we have to call it. Maybe somebody needs to send a letter to the police and the FBI and say, wow, good job today.
For not
Do that again. Next time you're called in, treat everybody that way. Right? If all lives matter, because that's what they like to say, right?
Yeah.
Is if all lives matter, then mine matters too. Yours matters too. And until they all matter, we've got to focus on Black Lives Matter, because those are the ones that currently are treated like they don't.
Yeah.
And it has to change.
It just, I remember I'm a huge Abraham fan, And some years ago, there was a woman that said she wanted to introduce her son to Martin Luther King, but she didn't want to introduce the prejudice. And Abraham said, it's not the person that's giving the prejudice as much as it is the one that's receiving it. And it turned my world upside down, because I was like, I went from thinking of Abraham as the light and presence of God to what is this white woman talking about? It was just like, boom. And it took me a minute to understand, because the law of attraction, if you believe in it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color you are, what sex you are. It is, I believe it is a law, and the law works consistently no matter what.
Exactly.
And so sitting there today, seeing that, realizing that I have some healing to do within me, that in order to carry the torch of radical loving kindness, in order to shine the light of love, I've got to see love in places that sometimes, like today, was very difficult.
And to honor yourself for that.
Yes, yes. Yes, it's interesting to be in it and to also try to be outside of it. And I just have to be in it. I just
You have to be in it.
I have to be in it, and recognize that this too is a part of spiritual community. That it's not always polite and nice. And that sometimes it's difficult to express the things that hurt. Sometimes it's difficult to say in an outside voice the things that hurt. But communication is the start. It is the start. Do you mind sharing a story that you shared with me that Genevieve, your beautiful daughter, that she experienced a few days ago?
Yeah, because this, it really angered me. Like when we talked about it, I shared that with you. My daughter is 15 and was riding the subway home from school. She goes to school in downtown Toronto, and we live in the Far East End, so it's a long subway ride. And she was riding the subway with two of her girlfriends from school who are Muslim from Somalia. So the three of them, the two girls are sitting down, Genevieve standing with them, and they're just being teenagers. And a woman is sitting just across from them. She's not wearing a mask, which is required by law here in Toronto, but she's got her coat pulled up. So she's sitting there and she's mumbling something, and the girls can't figure out what she's mumbling. And then she pulls her coat down and she spits at one of these girls. Now, we know that COVID is transmitted by droplets. Well, this wasn't a droplet. I mean, she didn't spit on her, she spit at her, but regardless. Then she started cursing her out in ways that were, well, I could never repeat, and surely not here. And then, telling them violent things she wanted to do with them. And the girls were they didn't even know what to think. And when Genevieve was getting off the subway, she got her friends to get off with her as well, because they could take another subway car to finish their ride, because they weren't done yet. And so I was outraged when Genevieve told me. She, tells me everything. And I was really mortified. So I called the transit, and they said, well, we can supply video and stuff to the police, but this really is a police matter. So I phoned the police. The woman I'm talking to on the phone is awesome and goes, absolutely. Sends out two officers. So who comes to the door? Two tall white guys. And Genevieve is sharing the story with them. And they're writing, and the one guy is like, you can tell he's kind of bored. And so he says to her, he said, will your friend, file a complaint? Like, will she say something? And he said, I don't know, I'll ask her. So she phones her, and her friend goes, absolutely not. Like, she's a Muslim girl. If when she got off that train, she cursed the woman, right? So she doesn't want that coming out, right? If her parents found that out, like, who knows what would happen to her. So she can't stand up for herself. So we're telling the police, and we tell them a couple of times the story. Genevieve outlines it in full detail. And then the cop goes, well, the woman probably, has some mental issues. And, we can't do anything unless the girl herself, who is actually, it was directed at, actually comes forward. And I was really outraged by that. I called the mayor's office, they couldn't help me. And I thought, here's people who cannot advocate for themselves, and a witness who was present to the whole thing cannot stand up and bear witness for them.
Right.
I was so angry at the police. I thought, you don't care. If they'd done it to Genevieve, she would have said something. Like, she stands up for herself. She's got, she knows she can, but her friends couldn't.
Yes.
So I was really sad about that. And I thought, here's another example. Again, I took that course, Daring to Do, and in that class, it was like, it's not okay to just notice racism or whatever. You have to address it, and at every level. And nobody would listen.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely no one would listen. And it just broke my heart. And I thought, we got to do better.
It's one of the things I wanted you to share that story, because I do appreciate that you and Genevieve did stand up, that you did take the next step, that you did do something. And our system is broken in such a way that we tend to make excuses and justify why a person is doing something, and instead of at least following up. Because even if she is mentally disturbed, mental disorder, this person is dangerous in public situations. You never know what may happen. And so it is heartbreaking when a system that we think is there to support all doesn't show up. It doesn't show up, and has been given the right of way that it's okay not to, depending on the person's color or their sexuality. In a couple of weeks, we're going to address the transgender. The attack on the transgender community here in the States is unbelievable. And just like with anything else, it's that judgment, the hatred of something that's different, that you can't understand, that you feel, you being, be it the police, be it families, that feel that this person should be wiped off. This person should not be valued as a human being. It truly is. It truly is.
I was part of an organization that we were putting together a project. The organization was ACHO, the African Caribbean Council on HIV/AIDS, and we were working on reducing stigma in religious communities against Black people living with HIV, and just all the judgment and criticism that came with that. And when I first joined that committee, I thought, wow, how are we ever going to make headway on this? Because I know the fundamentalist idea of homosexuality, and of course HIV, it's like, oh, they must be gay. Not the truth by any stretch. And it's interesting that when I was, we did a bunch of work, and then we came up with a concept, it takes courage. And we came up with that because as ministers, it takes courage to stand on the pulpit and talk about HIV. But it's important that we begin to reduce that stigma, so that, because what I found is, especially in the Caribbean community, everybody goes to church back home, and then they come here and they still want to go to church, but if they're HIV positive and anybody finds out, they will be shunned.
Wow.
Right? And so every area we're looking at, and that transgender, I know that a couple of people, I knew one person that was in their 60s and finally came out.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful. And she stayed out for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years maybe, and then went back in the closet as a man because it was just too hard. He was, pushed out by everybody. As a man, he was acceptable, but as the real him, a woman, they wouldn't have it. And, it's interesting because when I met her, I loved her. She was awesome. With him, I always felt like there was something off. Well, of course, he was hiding.
Right.
He was hiding the truth. And
Right.
so when I look at transgender, when I look at gay rights, you know what? It's all human rights. There's one thing going on. We're all a part of it.
Yes.
It's going.
We are all a part of it. So, as your work in Canada, as you continue with your communities, how do you feel that you can support, or what new avenues are you open to exploring, to find new ways? I mean, of course, when we think about, for me, when I think about the magnitude of it, sometimes it feels like, where would you start? But we have to start wherever we are.
That's the key.
We just have to start wherever we are. And I love that you're anchored in love, because love is the guiding force for all.
It is, and one of the things that happened with ACHO, we held a seminar where we invited different religious leaders of Black congregations to come in. We had a couple of imams and some ministers, and there was one minister who, at the beginning of the day, said, "I don't have any of those people in my church." Right? She had a pretty good-sized congregation, a couple hundred people, right? And so I'm sitting there going, oh man, how are we ever going to get through this? By the end of the day, so we're talking about 3 hours later,
Yes.
she said, I want AIDS Toronto to come into my church and run a seminar so that we can come to understand. Because she didn't want to shun people. She just didn't know she had anybody.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to tell her because, right, the stigma is so huge. But the minute you start talking about it publicly and accepting, in an accepting way, then all of a sudden a healing starts to happen, right? She had a switch in a couple of hours. All we have to do is talk to each other.
Yeah, knowledge is so powerful. I think I've always thought that people at the core are good, that we are beautiful, magnificent beings, and this old consciousness that says, if I haven't done it, if I haven't lived it, if I don't agree with it, it should be snuffed out, it should be stopped. Somebody ought to stop it. And that old saying is one of the things of the ego consciousness that I think we're seeing all over the world, that is starting to, it's being highlighted, that this no longer works. It hasn't worked. And the fear of people thinking that if I let go of this, then what will there be? What will I have?
I think that's the big fear. And if we moved from competition to collaboration, from control to surrender, we would begin to live in harmony. Like, I think of the body, right? And it's many cells, and each cell does a certain job. And as long as it does its job, everything works.
Yep.
The universe is a collection of cells.
Yeah.
And if every cell does its job, it works harmoniously.
It does.
But we're not living our truth, each one of us, right? Many of us are doing work that we hate and living lives that are of misery because we're denying our authentic self.
Yes.
And I work day in and day out to try to get people to see their value. And that's the only message I can give to anybody is I love you just the way you are. Even if I don't like you, I still love you because you have a gift for me.
Yes.
If you live well, I live well. If, it's, yeah.
That's so beautifully said. And, one of the other magnificent things is that everybody doesn't want the same thing.
Exactly.
Everybody doesn't want the same thing, and there's plenty. If we haven't recognized this universe is abundant in so many ways, it doesn't run out of anything. Mind runs out of the awakening of solutions. But the universe is constantly supplying, it is constantly reaffirming itself.
Yep.
Nature always takes me back to that space of like, wow, it just constantly keeps supplying. It doesn't run out. And if it appears to run out in one particular way, it morphs itself into something totally new that once again supports us. Once again supports us.
Looking at an area where there's been a forest fire and going back a few years later and seeing all of the growth, right? It's like it continues.
Yeah.
There isn't, if we could come to understand that there is enough for everyone, if we could come to understand that each one of us is created unique and special, and that whatever it is we bring to the planet at this time, we're the only one on the planet who can actually bring it in the way that we do.
Yeah.
And so when we look at somebody that we're not crazy about or we don't like the way they do things, if we would just look at them and go, wow, that's really cool. I wouldn't do it that way, but you know what? I can appreciate their perspective.
Yes.
And with that, I can be in harmony with them. Even if it's somebody I don't like and don't want to hang out with, that's okay.
Yeah.
I can't hang out with 8 billion people anyway, right? I could handle 1 or 2 at a time, but 8 billion, that's a bit overwhelming. So, but I can love, and by love, what I mean is I accept you as you are where you are.
Yeah.
I respect you, even if I disagree with you.
Yes.
And I choose to just honor your ability to be you.
Yes. I think you hit a key point on respect and understanding that I can respect someone and not agree with what they're doing. But with that does not mean that I judge them of how they're living. And allow, if this world, I have said that I don't know that I'm going to see the world that I dream of on this trip as Gino. as Gino, I don't know if I'm going to see it. But there are parts of me certain days that can feel this love that's so overwhelming and so beautiful. Watching a hummingbird do its thing, that it's unmoved by the rest of the world. It's just like, look, I'm having some nectar right here. All is well with my world. All is good. So I know one of these other journeys when I come back, that the world will be in this other space. But I do feel that it is people of awakened consciousness. It is time to get in the driver's seat. And not change people, but awaken the course. So as we wrap this up, you said a lot of amazing things tonight. But if there's one thing that you could say to the journey of Black Lives Matter, to the journey that we all are one, to the journey that there can be peace in the heart without having to co-sign what someone else is doing, What would you say to the journey?
Well, what I say every day is that there is only this now moment. And what I do in this moment matters because that's what's creating my future. The past doesn't exist, so there's not much point in me pulling it forward. And the future doesn't exist either, so I don't need to be projecting too far out there because I don't know what's coming tomorrow. But what I do know right now is what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm saying. And if I can, take the words of Jesus, if we even knew those words, but Jesus was, supposedly a man who lived and one. And I'm pretty certain he was a person of color, given where he came from. So, on that note, my black Jesus was a rebel. Yes, I like that. And he loved, period. And he stood for justice because he stood up to the people who were, changing money or whatever in the temple.
Yes.
So I think that we want to learn from the rebels that have come before us. We want to learn from the people who stood up in the face of danger and said, enough. The Gandhis, the Kings, I remember Mother Teresa being quoted as saying, don't ask me to attend an anti-war rally, I won't go.
Yes.
But you want me to go to a peace
Yes.
sit-in or whatever, I'm in.
Yes.
What I'd say right now for Black Lives Matter is this is a beautiful platform of love, and that as that love grows and expands, because that's where it was birthed, and as that love grows and expands, the collection of people drawn into it, regardless of skin color,
Yes.
will support the idea that until every single one of us is treated equally, respectfully, lovingly, for who we are, where we are, as we are,
Yes.
until every one of us is, none of us are free.
Awesome. That was so well said. I want to thank you, Reverend Barbara, for being here with me tonight.
I'm so grateful.
And we will do something again for sure. We're cooking something up together.
We are.
I
I'm
love
excited.
and adore you so much.
Yeah, I love you too.
It was such an amazing space for you to be here tonight and pour some of that love on me for me to recognize and remember that love is the absolute diamond. And get some rest. I know it's late there in Canada.
That's only 10:52.
Oh. Give my love to the family, and let's
I
check
will.
in the next week or so.
Yes, absolutely. I love you, my dear sister. God bless you, and allow yourself to feel and to heal.
Thank you, my sister. I love you.
I love you too.
I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright, and I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. This is our Divine Conscious Giving time. To each and every one of you, from my heart to yours, I am wrapping you in a virtual hug, feeling your love pour back over me right now and over Universal Spirit Center. We give thanks for each and every one of you, for your continued support, for your being on the front line to lead, to guide, to be that magnificent reflection of Spirit. Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate every donation, every letter, every card, every voicemail. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being there every Sunday, every Wednesday. We appreciate your time to go on YouTube and look at the other videos that we have done. We just appreciate you. And for sharing with your family and your friends, thank you. Thank you. I am the light. I am the light. I am the light of this world. I am the light. I am the light. I am the light of this world. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright, and I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. I am the light. I am the light. I am the light of this world. I am the light. I am the light. I am the light of this world. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. Oh, you shine, yes, you shine. Oh, you shine so bright. Thank each and every one of you for being with us tonight. Know that the practitioners are available for prayer. If you are in need and you want to just be heard and have that presence of God anchored in wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're feeling right now, try to be mindful not to inhale so much news right now. I know it can be a little challenging. And know that you are supported. You're in a community that supports you. Tonight, I want to thank Reverend Kevin for coming in and for being that presence to anchor our community, to remind us once again what the truth is. And as always, to thank this amazing crew that supports everything here on Wednesday. Sarah running the show. Sarah Adams in the house. Woof, 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 woof. And of course, my beautiful beloved Linda Ely handling the music. We thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. Know that you are a shining light no matter what. As the lights in DC are shining too. The pain may be what's present, but we can hold a light of love so bright that that energy can be felt. It can heal and move. So keep praying, keep knowing the truth. Keep the anchor of God is right where you are. Peace and blessings.